السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ صلی اللہ علی النبی الأمی وآلہ صلی اللہ تعالی علیہ وسلم۔ پیارے اسلامی بھائیو، آج یہ چوتھی نشست ہے۔ اللہ تعالیٰ کے کرم سے، اس کے حبیب کے وسیلے سے اللہ پاک ہم سب کی کاوشوں کو اپنی بارگاہ رحمت میں قبول فرمائے۔ متبرک ایام ہیں، محرم الحرام کا پہلا عشرہ ہے اور یہ پورا مہینہ حرمت والا مہینہ ہے۔ اس میں اللہ تعالیٰ کی خصوصی رحمتوں کا نزول ہوتا ہے۔ اللہ پاک اپنے بندوں کی بخشش فرماتا ہے، لہذا ہم سب کو چاہیے کہ ان ایام کو توبہ، استغفار، ذکر اذکار میں گزارنے کی کوشش کریں۔ نمازوں کی پابندی لازمی ہے۔ اللہ پاک ہم سب کو گناہوں کی لعنت سے نجات عطا فرمائے۔ آج الحمدللہ حافظ مولانا عابد صاحب قبلہ مد ظلہ العالی یہاں تشریف فرما ہیں۔ انشاءاللہ تعالی آپ قرآن پاک کی تلاوت کے ساتھ نعتوں کے گلدستے پیش کرنے کا شرف حاصل کریں گے۔ ان کا اپنا انداز ہے، انوکھا انداز ہے۔ اللہ تعالیٰ نے آپ کو بہت ہی خوبصورت اور پرکیف آواز سے نوازا ہے۔ اللہ تعالیٰ آپ کو خوش اور سلامت رکھے۔ اس کے بعد انشاءاللہ تعالیٰ 2 انگلش میں بیانات ہوں گے۔ ایک مختصر بیان ہوگا حافظ و قاری عدنان صاحب قبلہ، ان کا مختصر، ماشاءاللہ انہوں نے حفظ بھی مکمل کیا ہے، قرأت بھی پڑھ رہے ہیں اور ابھی درس نظامی یعنی عالمیت کا کورس کر رہے ہیں، تو یہ بھی کوئی مختصر پیغام آپ کی خدمت میں پہنچائیں گے۔ اس کے بعد مولانا نعیم منشی صاحب قبلہ مد ظلہ العالی، بہت پیارے عالم دین، متقی اور نرم طبیعت کے مالک، انتہائی منکسر المزاج، انشاءاللہ تعالی ان کا خطاب ہوگا انگلش میں۔ آپ تمام دوست احباب سے میں ملتمس ہوں کہ آپ ہمارے ساتھ آخر تک رہیں اور پوری نشست میں شامل رہیں۔ جو کچھ بھی پیغام آپ کی خدمت میں دیا جا رہا ہے اسے دل کی گہرائیوں سے قبول فرمائیں۔ میں مولانا عابد صاحب قبلہ سے ملتمس ہوں کہ تشریف لائیں اور کلام پاک کی تلاوت سے بزم کا آغاز فرمائیں۔
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ یا ایہا النبی انا ارسلناک شاہدا انا ارسلناک شاہدا ومبشرا ونذیرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا، صدق الله العظيم۔ نعت شریف کے چند اشعار سماعت فرمائیں۔ درود پاک پڑھ لیجئے۔ اللہ رب محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، نحن عباد محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔ کلام اعلیٰ حضرت پیش کرنے کی سعادت حاصل کر رہا ہوں، سماعت فرمائیں۔ ان کی مہک نے دل کے غنچے کھلا دیے ہیں، ان کی مہک نے دل کے غنچے کھلا دیے ہیں، غنچے کھلا دیے ہیں، جس راہ چل گئے ہیں کوچے بسا دیے ہیں، جس راہ چل گئے ہیں کوچے بسا دیے ہیں۔ جب آ گئی ہے جوش رحمت پہ ان کی آنکھیں، رحمت پہ ان کی آنکھیں، جب آ گئی ہے جوش رحمت پہ ان کی آنکھیں، جلتے بجھا دیے ہیں، روتے ہنسا دیے ہیں، جلتے بجھا دیے ہیں، روتے ہنسا دیے ہیں۔ ایک دل ہمارا کیا ہے، ایک دل ہمارا کیا ہے، آزار اس کا کتنا، آزار اس کا کتنا، تم نے تو چلتے پھرتے مردے جلا دیے ہیں، تم نے تو چلتے پھرتے مردے جلا دیے ہیں۔ اور ان کے نثار کوئی کیسے ہی رنج میں ہو، ان کے نثار کوئی کیسے ہی رنج میں ہو، جب یاد آ گئے ہیں سب غم بھلا دیے ہیں۔ آنے دو یا ڈبو دو اب تو تمہاری جانب، اب تو تمہاری جانب، آنے دو یا ڈبو دو، آنے دو یا ڈبو دو، اب تو تمہاری جانب، کشتی تمہیں پہ چھوڑی، لنگر اٹھا دیے ہیں، کشتی تمہیں پہ چھوڑی، لنگر اٹھا دیے ہیں۔ اللہ کیا جہنم اب بھی نہ سرد ہوگا، اللہ کیا جہنم اب بھی نہ سرد ہوگا، رو رو کے مصطفیٰ نے دریا بہا دیے ہیں، رو رو کے مصطفیٰ نے دریا بہا دیے ہیں۔ میرے کریم سے گر قطرہ کسی نے مانگا، قطرہ کسی نے مانگا، میرے کریم سے گر، میرے کریم سے گر قطرہ کسی نے مانگا، دریا بہا دیے ہیں، در بے بہا دیے ہیں۔ مقطع ملاحظہ فرمائے، ملک سخن کی شاہی تم کو رضا مسلم، تم کو رضا مسلم، ملک سخن کی شاہی تم کو رضا مسلم، جسد آ گئے ہو سکے بٹھا دیے ہیں، جسد آ گئے ہو سکے بٹھا دیے ہیں، ان کی مہک نے دل کے غنچے کھلا دیے ہیں، جس راہ چل گئے ہیں کوچے بسا دیے ہیں۔ منقبت کے چند اشعار پیش کر رہا ہوں، سماعت فرمائیں، درود پاک پڑھ لیجئے، صلی اللہ علیہ یا رسول اللہ وسلم علیہ یا حبیب اللہ۔ باغ جنت کے ہیں بہرے مدح خانے اہل بیت، باغ جنت کے ہیں بہرے مدح خانے اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت، کس زبان سے ہو بیان عز و شان اہل بیت، مدح گوئے مصطفیٰ ہے مدح خانے اہل بیت، مدح گوئے مصطفیٰ ہے مدح خانے اہل بیت، ان کی پاکی کا خدائے پاک کرتا ہے بیان، ان کی پاکی کا خدائے پاک کرتا ہے بیان، آیا تطہیر سے ظاہر ہے شان اہل بیت، آیا تطہیر سے ظاہر ہے شان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت، اور ان کے گھر میں بے اجازت جبرائیل آتے نہیں، ان کے گھر میں بے اجازت جبرائیل آتے نہیں، قدر والے جانتے ہیں قدر و شان اہل بیت، قدر والے جانتے ہیں قدر و شان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت، فاطمہ کے لاڈلے کا آخری دیدار ہے، فاطمہ کے لاڈلے کا آخری دیدار ہے، حشر کا ہنگامہ برپا ہے میان اہل بیت، حشر کا ہنگامہ برپا ہے میان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا ہے دشمنان اہل بیت۔ گھر لٹانا جان دینا کوئی تجھ سے سیکھ جائے، گھر لٹانا جان دینا کوئی تجھ سے سیکھ جائے، جان عالم ہو فدا اے خاندان اہل بیت، جان عالم ہو فدا اے خاندان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت۔ اہل بیت پاک سے گستاخیاں بے باکیاں، اہل بیت پاک سے گستاخیاں بے باکیاں، لعنت اللہ علیکم دشمنان اہل بیت، لعنت اللہ علیکم دشمنان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت۔ بے ادب گستاخ فرقے کو سنا دے اے حسن، بے ادب گستاخ فرقے کو سنا دے اے حسن، کہ یوں کہا کرتے ہیں سنی داستان اہل بیت، یوں کہا کرتے ہیں سنی داستان اہل بیت، تم کو مژدہ نار کا اے دشمنان اہل بیت۔
ہم سب کے دلوں کو روشن فرمائیں۔
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ الحمد للہ رب العالمین والعاقبۃ للمتقین والصلاة والسلام على سید الانبیاء والمرسلین، اما بعد فاعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ سبحانک لا علم لنا الا ما علمتنا انک انت العلیم الحکیم، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي، صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله صلى الله تعالى عليك وسلم. بحمده تعالى. It's a great honor to be present on this platform. MashaAllah, Hazrat Allama Maulana Mohsin Saab and the entire Qamar team have done a great service to the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah by organizing this series of programs on a very important topic. Because perhaps in the history of human civilization, you will find a sacrifice like the sacrifice of Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. Many people have given different types of sacrifices. Some people have given sacrifices of wealth. Some people have given sacrifice of property. Some people are given sacrifice of blood. But Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala not only gave his sacrifice, the sacrifice of his life, but rather of his family, of his friends, of his companions, all in order to uphold the banner of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So bihamdihi ta'ala, we have this great opportunity, this great honor to speak in regards to this incident. In reality, when we were discussing the life and the sacrifice of Imam Hussein, we would have to begin from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam foretold with tears of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. But unfortunately, time does not permit. This is a lengthy discussion from the life of Rasulullah, then to the Khilafah of Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Hassan ibn Ali, then Muawiyah. Then we come towards Karbala. For that reason, inshaAllah ta'ala, my discussion will begin from the 60th year after Hijrah, when Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala and he leaves this world. Now Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala and at this point had been a leader for 40 years, 40 saal ke liye. 20 years he was a minister. He was initially appointed by Sayyidina Umar. And then after Sayyidina Hassan ibn Ali, he transferred leadership to Sayyidina Muawiyah, fulfilling the prophecy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because Rasulullah sallam ne farmaya that this son of mine, he will bring peace between two groups. And this was that prophecy when he transferred leadership to Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala. So once Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala had passed away, for 40 years he's leading the people they wish. वो चाहते हैं कि कोई Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah के family में से ही leader बने. They have a strong attachment. So they encourage Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah, what about your son Yazid? Make him the leader. At this point, Yazid, there wasn't much known about him. There was some evil traits, but the major things which we hear about, this happened later when he attained leadership. So Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala, he placed Yazid in the position of power. Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah, he leaves this world. Now Yazid is unlike his father. Sayyidina Muawiyah, Sahabi Rasul, Katibi Wahi, yani such an honored and esteemed individual, related to the Prophet ﷺ through marriage. But unfortunately, his son Yazid was the complete opposite in many aspects, not just from a dini aspect, even from a political aspect. He had no political prowess, he had no political knowledge. So when he came to even taking the bay'ah, taking the allegiance of the people, he was unable to do so. Ye bhi nahi kar sakta tha. So what happened? The ministers and the advisors, they said, Yazid, if you want to remain in power, there are certain individuals, kuch log aise hai, you must take their bay'ah. Unki bay'at lene hi padegi, even if you have to force them to do so, otherwise you will not stay in power for very long. And from those individuals that were mentioned, 3 individuals in specific, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, in regards to whom, mashallah, Hazrat Allama Maulana Naeem Munshi, he did a beautiful lecture on this very platform. And then 2 more individuals. One was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, radiallahu ta'ala. Who was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr? The son of Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. Who was Sayyidina Zubayr ibn al-Awwam? He was the son of al-Awwam, who was the brother of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. His mother was Sayyidah Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, the only auntie of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam accepted Islam. Their child was Sayyidina Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ne farmaya कि every Nabi has a disciple, and my disciple is Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. He was the first person to raise a sword in defense of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's an amazing individual, Sayyidina Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala an. He married the daughter of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, Asma bint Abi Bakr. And when they migrated to Medina, Yahudiyon ne kya kaha? Ki humne Musalman par sihr kiya hai. We've done magic on them. They won't be able to have children. وَبِحَمْدِهِ ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the muhajirun, the migrants. From them, the first child who was born was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala, the son of Sayyidina Zubayr ibn al-Awwam and Sayyidina Asma bint Abi Bakr. Now listen to this. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, a time would come, ऐसा वक्त आता है, that no one is able to do tawaf of the Kaaba. कोई भी tawaf नहीं कर सकता है. Why? Because water has come into the vicinity of the Kaaba. And no one's able to do tawaf. Sirf ek akela hai. One person who is doing tawaf of the Kaaba, and that too whilst he's swimming. And this is saying Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu. But aap पूछेंगे, how did Allah give him so much strength? Itni quwwat kaise hasil hui? So he's mentioned once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had cupping done. He had cupping done. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, this blood, this is your responsibility. Go and place it. Now Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he looks at it, he says, what do I do? The entire body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is clean. Right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives this to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. What does he do? He drinks it. Now a time comes where no one can do tawaf with the Kaaba, and only individually Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr who does so whilst he's swimming around the Kaaba. How did he attain this strength? Every part, every piece of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is pure. So he was the first individual who was born in Madinatul Munawwara from the migrants. This is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. He says, you must take bay'ah from him. And the last one, Sayyidina Hussein ibn Ali radiallahu ta'ala. In तीनों से bay'at लेनी ही पड़ेगी. You must take allegiance from them, otherwise you're going to be in serious trouble. So Yazid, he sends a message to Walid ibn Utbah, who is the vizier, he is the minister of Madinatul Munawwara. Now Walid, he doesn't want turmoil. He doesn't want fasad. He remembers too well the khilaf of Sayyidina Uthman, when blood was spilt in Madinatul Munawwara. So he approaches a person, Marwan ibn Hakam. Now Marwan, there's a lot that can be said about him, but I'm going to reserve myself here. All it's important to know is that he had a lot of political knowledge. He said, you must summon them, take bay'ah from them, and if they do not listen, you must kill them. So he calls Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he does not answer. He says he will come. And then later he leaves from Medina, he goes to Makkah al-Mukarramah. Abdullah ibn Umar, at this point, he's not concerned. He's worried about Sayyidina Hussein ibn Ali radiallahu ta'ala. When he calls him, Sayyidina Hussein goes with his family. He says, I'm going in. If you hear any commotion, you come into my aid. Otherwise, let me deal with this. He goes in, he speaks to Walid. Marwan ibn Hakam is also present. And Sayyidina Hussein ibn Ali, when he's conversing, he comes to realize Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah has passed away. Walid says to him, you must pledge allegiance to Yazid. Sayyidina Imam Hussein says, I am not an individual who does bay'ah in private. Aisa koi shakhs nahi hu. I do bay'ah behind closed doors. You know who I am. Makkatul Mukarramah, he fights with his brother and he captures him. And he brings him back to Makkatul Mukarramah. Now people are drawn towards Abdullah ibn Zubayr. But he does not have that same magnetism. He is not like Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. When Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala enters into Makkatul Mukarramah, the people, they come out to greet Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. And Sayyidina Imam Hussein, he begins to lead the people in salah, in namaz. And the people, they love Sayyidina Imam Hussein. And in Makkatul Mukarramah, he begins to lecture the people. He begins to discuss. You can imagine this. Sayyidina Imam Hussein standing where Rasulullah stood, delivering discourse to the people, explaining to the people. You can imagine the situation, how beautiful the scenes would have been. Now these two individuals, they're in Makkatul Mukarramah, and all of a sudden some letters begin to come into Makkah. Where are they coming from? They're coming from Kufa. Now because Kufa plays a central role in this entire qissa, in this entire historical event, it's important to understand what Kufa is. Kufa koi shahr nahi tha. It never used to even exist. In actual fact, what happened in the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, between the years 12 after Hijri and 16 after Hijri, the Khilafah expanded north into Iraq, and all of these areas, they fell into the Muslim hands. But the Muslims who were from Madinatul Munawwara, they couldn't fit in the climate of Madain and these types of places. So what they did, Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, you know Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu ta'ala an, yani Sahaba kya kaha karte the, they would say, Abi wa ummi laka ya Rasulullah, my mother and my father are for you, ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas was that companion in regards to whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ne khud farmaya, Abi wa ummi laka ya Sa'd, my father and my mother are for you, O Sa'd. He was the first one to draw blood for the Muslims. They were worshipping in the valleys of Makkah al-Mukarramah. When the Quraysh, they saw this, and in the early days of Islam, jab dekha ke ye log ibadat kar rahe hain, to they attacked them, they began to mock them, and so on and so forth. So Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he took the jawbone of a camel and he struck one of the Quraysh on the head, and the person began to bleed. He was the first one to fire an arrow for the sake of Islam. Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, a great companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he established the city of Kufa. They made houses there, so on and so forth. Then later, the likes of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala, and they went to the city of Kufa and they spread knowledge far and wide. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala, and he would say that there is not a verse of the Quran ki ek bhi aisi ayat nahi hai, in regards to which I do not know, kab nazil hui, kaise nazil hui, all of this information I have. If I knew of a person who had more knowledge of the Quran, I would go on horseback to meet that person. He had this much knowledge of the Quran. Ab aap puchenge ki how did he get so much knowledge of the Quran? So when I was discussing with my ustad, he said, you know what one of the titles of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one of his titles is Sahibun Na'alayn. He used to carry the slippers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not just carry them, he would place them here under his arm, and he would always keep them here close to him. Yahan tak ki even when he would sit down, he wouldn't place the slippers on the floor. He would keep them with him. Now look how Allah blessed him with knowledge. He spread knowledge far and wide. Even us as the followers of Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, we are indebted to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, because this knowledge which he spread in the city of Kufa eventually was distilled into the likes of Imam al-Azam Abu Hanifa. So Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he spread knowledge there. In the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, and remember in Madinatul Munawwara, Sayyidina Uthman was made martyred, he was made shaheed. So Sayyidina Ali, he moved the Khilafah, the center of the Khilafah, from Medina to Kufa. Because when he went there, he saw how much knowledge had been spread by the likes of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So this became the center of the Muslim Khilafah. And the people, they would refer to themselves as Shiani Ali, the supporters and lovers of Ali. This is where the name Shia comes from, right? So this is the city of Kufa, how it was established. Sayyidina Ali, he would, during his Khilafah, this is where he was. So these letters, they start to come in. In reality, what had happened, कि ये लोग ने जब सुना कि सैयदना इमाम हुसैन ने यजीद के हाथों पर बैत नहीं किया है, he has left from Medina, he's gone to Makkah al-Mukarramah, then they thought that now is our chance. So they began to write letters to Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. First one letter came with a few signatures, then another letter comes, then another letter comes, then another letter comes. In 2 days, they say some 53 letters had come from Kufa with different numbers of signatures, all saying to Imam Hussein, "O Imam Hussein, we have not done bay'ah to Yazid. We supported your father, we will support you. We do not want to follow Yazid. You come to Kufa. If you come to Kufa, we will walk behind you, we will stand behind you." Now the people of Makkah al-Mukarramah, they knew, wo jante the ki ye log kaise hai. So they said, "O Imam Hussein, ye log wo log hai who betrayed your father Sayyidina Ali, they betrayed your brother Sayyidina Imam Hassan, and they will betray you as well. Aapke bhi mukhalif honge." So you mustn't listen to them. You cannot go to them. If you go to them, they will stab you in the back like they did with your father and your brother. So Imam Hussein, he explains to them, unko samjhata hai, that listen, if I do not go, and if I do not lead these people, to Qayamat ke din ye log kahenge that we didn't want to follow Yazid. We wanted to follow Imam Hussein, but he did not come to us. So we had to follow Yazid. So from a Shari'i perspective, it becomes necessary for me to go. But the people, they were insistent. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he says, you cannot go. These people, they are treacherous people. They are cunning people. When the time comes, they will abandon you. To is hisab hai. Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala, he decided to send a representative, send a naib. And this shows the excellence, the fazilat of Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil. Because he could have chose anyone. But when he chose a representative, he chose one person, and that was Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil. Ye kaun hai? Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil was the cousin brother of Sayyidina Imam Hussein. Sayyidina Muslim, his father was Aqil. Sayyidina Imam Hussein, his father was Ali. And they were brothers. They were the sons of Abu Talib. So now, Sayyidina Imam Hussein, he had great love for Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil. Now, Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil wo bhi keh sakte the na, that this is your problem. Why are you sending me? But look at the love he had for Imam Hussein. Look at the love. He's going into a difficult place, and he has to carry out a difficult task, but he does not complain. He has been given the hukum, he leaves from Makkah al-Mukarramah. On his way, his guides, those who are taking him to Kufa, they pass away. But still he proceeds, because he's been given a mission. And when he arrives in Kufa, he stays in the house of Mukhtar ibn Ubayd. And then the people begin to come. One person, and two people, and three people, and then there's 20, and there's 30, and there's 50, and then you have 100, and 200, and then you get to 1,000. Within 2 days, sirf do din mein, just 2 days, 1,000 Kufans, they pledged allegiance to Imam Hussein at the hands of Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil radiallahu ta'ala. And then slowly increases. Some people, they say 16,000, 18,000, 40,000 people. Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil ne khat likha. He writes a letter to Imam Hussein. He says, "Oh Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala an, the conditions are very good. The conditions are very good. You must come immediately to Kufa. So many people have pledged allegiance. They are ready to follow you. You must come to Kufa immediately." He sends the letter. Now the governor of Kufa at that time, his name is Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala. Ye sahabi Rasul hai. The first child from the Muhajir was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. But when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina, the first child from the Ansar was Nu'man ibn Bashir. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was born, his mother brought him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took a kujur and he did tahniq. And it's mentioned that Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir, he became a great khatib of his time. He was a great lecturer of his time. So he's the governor of Kufa. He was very old at this time. Kafi umar thi. So a person, when he was sitting in the gatherings of Muslim ibn Aqil, he saw everything was happening. He went to Nu'man ibn Bashir. He was a supporter. This man was a supporter of Yazid. He says to Nu'man ibn Bashir that, "What is this? Aap jante hai kya ho raha hai? What is happening? And you have done nothing. You have not tried to stop this. What's happening?" So Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir, he says, "La uqatilu man la yuqatiluni." Why should I fight against someone who is not fighting against me? He is not fighting against me. Why would I fight against him? So this man, he says to him, "Innaka da'if." You're a weak man. So listen to the words of Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir. Some words that we should really ponder upon. Because he says, أن أكون ضعيفا وأنا في طاعة الله أحب إلي من أن أكون قويا في معصية الله. That I am weak, कि मैं कमज़ोर हूँ, लेकिन I am obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ये मुझसे, this is more beloved to me than I should be strong in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this man, this individual, when he realized he's getting nowhere with Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir, he wrote a letter to Yazid and he mentioned to him the situation in Kufa. Now you can imagine Yazid's situation. He tried to stop it in Medina, it spread to Makkah. He tried to stop it in Makkah, it spread to Kufa. And in Kufa, thousands of people are gathering in support of Imam Hussein. Yazid himself, he doesn't know nothing. He isn't a man who is able to handle the situation, but he has some people around him. And one of those individuals, he says, this is the solution to your problem. There is a governor of Basra, which is very close to Kufa. This was another city as well, in that region. His name was Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Young man, in his 20s, he's hot-blooded, very short-tempered, very cunning, a lot of political knowledge. Take him, place him into Kufa. He will resolve your problem. He will sort your problem out. So Yazid immediately, he sends a message to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad appoints his brother Uthman ibn Ziyad as the governor of Basra, and he leaves towards the direction of Kufa. But you can't just walk in. You can't just walk into Kufa. So look at how knowledgeable he is. When he reaches Qadisiyah, which is just outside of Kufa, the people who are with him, his army, he says to them, you stay behind. And then he wears Hijazi clothes, the clothes of the people of Makkah al-Mukarramah. And he gets onto a camel, and with just a few people, at night time between Maghrib and Isha, he enters into Kufa. Now no one knows who this person is. They see a man who's wearing Hijazi clothes, entering from the direction of Makkah al-Mukarramah. So now every person he passes, they say, Marhaban bika yabni Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alayk yabna binti Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Peace be upon you, the son of the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Peace be upon you, O son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They think it is Imam Hussein. And so like this, Ibn Ziyad, he walks all the way to the governor's house and he enters into the governor house of Kufa. When he enters, he dismisses Nu'man ibn Bashir and he establishes himself in the city of Kufa. Now look at his cunning, look at his intelligence. He'd begin to gather the people, beat them, torture them, kill them, try and find where Muslim ibn Aqil is. But Ibn Ziyad ne aisa nahi kiya. His plan was very interesting. He took one of his servants whose name was Ma'akal. He was from Sham, from Syria. He gave him 3,000 silver coins. And he says to him, go out and sit in the majalis of Kufa. जब भी महफिल होती है, जब भी मजलिस होती है, उसमें बैठ जाना. And find the people who are the lovers of the Ahle Bayt. जो Ahle Bayt से मोहब्बत करते हैं, उनको तलाशो. So what he does is he goes to the masjid of Kufa and he sees a man whose name is Ibn Awsaja, who's a great lover of the Ahle Bayt. He goes to him, he says, listen, I am from Sham, I am looking for Muslim ibn Aqil, I know he's in Kufa, I have heard that he's here, I wish to give him this gift of 3,000 silver coins. He tricks him, and when he tricks him and he finds out where Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil is, he begins to sit in the gatherings. He sits there and he begins to take intel, he begins to take information, and he feeds this all back to Ibn Ziyad. Now what's interesting for Ibn Ziyad and what shocks him is that Ibn Ziyad, when he entered into Kufa, he gathered the leaders of Kufa and he explained to them that if they stood against Yazid, he would punish them severely. But one of the leaders was missing, Hani bin Urwa. He was the leader of one of the tribes of Kufa. But he was always missing. He always had some sort of excuse. And Ibn Ziyad and Hani, they were friends, they knew each other from before. He found out at that time that when Ibn Ziyad came into Kufa, Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil had been moved from the house of Mukhtar ibn Ubayd to the house of Hani ibn Urwa. That he was living in the house of Hani ibn Urwa. And this enraged him. He was completely livid when he came to this knowledge. So he summoned Hani and he called him to the governor's house. When Hani presented himself to the governor's house, he presented salam to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad did not respond. He responded by saying, "Do you harbor the enemy of the Amir? You are protecting the enemy of the Amir." So Hani, he began to backpedal. He began to try and talk himself out of this. At this point, Ibn Ziyad, he summoned the Ma'kal, the spy, his servant. When Hani, he saw this, that person who he was seeing in all of the gatherings, he realized that the situation had become apparent, that the secret had been exposed. So at this point now, Ibn Ziyad says, "You must hand over Muslim ibn Aqil to me." Hani says, "This can never be the case. How can I hand over an individual and you're going to kill him?" So Ibn Ziyad, in this conversation, he became so angry, he began to strike Hani. He began to beat him severely, such that Hani was covered in blood. So Hani, in that skirmish, he tried to take one of the swords of the soldiers. And then at that point, Ibn Ziyad said, "Now your blood is halal for me." But look at Ibn Ziyad. He could have killed him, but he was intelligent. He knew if that he killed him, it would have caused him a lot of problems. So instead, he locked him up in the prison. He locked him up in the dungeons. Now the news is spread to the family, to the tribe of Hani, that Hani had been murdered, had been killed. So they all came out the governor's house. But Ibn Ziyad, he says, "Look, I have not killed Hani. He is alive. I'm just interrogating him. I'm just questioning him." So the family returned. Now when the news reached Muslim ibn Aqil, he is the representative of Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. He could have stayed in hiding, but this is not the conduct, this is not the mannerism of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he came out onto the street and he calls the supporters. But from those thousands and thousands of people who had pledged allegiance to Imam Hussein, only a few thousand of them came. Already they began to show their treachery. Then he marches to the governor's house. And as they are marching, people, they begin to leave, and now only a few hundred remain. Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he stood outside the governor's house. If he wanted, he could have walked in, he could have killed Ibn Ziyad. But at this point, he had no shari'i reason to do so. And the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are those who follow the Sharia closely. So he's waiting outside. Now those individuals whom Ibn Ziyad, the leaders, he tells them, "Go out and tell your family to go back home. Tell them this is nothing to do with them." So they go out and they convince the family. When the time of Maghrib Salah comes, Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he goes to the masjid. He leads the people in Salah. And when he does salam, "Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah." When he looks back, what does he see? That all of them have abandoned him. There's not one single person left. They have all betrayed him. What the companions were mentioning about these individuals, it had become evident and it had become apparent. So now Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he is wandering in the streets of Kufa. This place is unknown to him. He knows nobody, and he's going from here to there, stricken with hunger, and no one is turning to him. Eventually he collapses outside the house of an elderly woman. And when this woman, she sees him, she has pity on him, she gets some water for him. And she gives him some water. When she takes the glass to go back in the house and she comes back outside, she sees that he's still sat there. She says, "Are, what are you doing? You've had your water, off you go now." And then Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil explains to her the situation. Her name was Tawa. He says that the situation is such that they invited me here, and the people of Kufa, they have betrayed the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When she realized that he was from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she invited him into the house and she gave him a place to stay. And she would feed him and so on and so forth. But her son, who was an alcoholic, in order to get a prize from Ibn Ziyad, he gave the information, unfortunately. Now Ibn Ziyad, he sent some 40 men on horseback. As Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he's sleeping, he hears the hooves of the horses, and he realizes that the secret is up. He takes his sword. The people enter. Now look at the strength. Allah bless the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani these individuals who are fully rested, they're coming into the house, and Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil by himself, he's driving them out of the house. They enter again, he drives them out of the house. They enter, he drives them out of the house. They are unable to defeat him. When he is fighting with Bukair, one of the individuals, at that point, Bukair, he strikes him with such ferocity that the lip of Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil is cut off, and his lower lip is injured. He's bleeding. But they are unable to defeat one individual, one member of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they go to dirty tactics. What they do is they set the house on fire, which forces Muslim ibn Aqil to come out of the house. But outside the house he is fighting, but still they cannot defeat him. So they move back and they begin to throw stones at him. Now Sayyidina Muslim, he's covered in blood. He's drenched in blood. But still they are unsuccessful. So they say, we want a truce. We want a truce. We promise you security. We promise you safety. Just stop fighting us. So Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, eventually he stops fighting. Now as they are taking him to the governor's house, they strip him of his sword. And at this point, Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he realized that they're going to betray him. After all of this, he realized still they are going to betray him. As Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he enters into the house, they make him wait outside. And there is a pot of water. He's been fighting under the heat of the sun. He's sweating, he's bleeding profusely. He calls for that water. Now that individual, what he says, ma'azallah, he says, there is no water for you except for the water of Jahannam. Astaghfirullah. Now imagine if somebody says something like this to us, and this person is saying it to an individual of such caliber, but he does not swear at him. He does not use vulgarity. He just responds to him with the same words. Eventually a person presents him that water, but every time he tries to take a sip, the water is filled with blood. And the strike which Bukair had given to Sayyidina Muslim in the battle, at that point when he places the water to his mouth, his front two teeth, they come out into the pot of water. Allahu Akbar. A person would be so disheartened at this time. But Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, Ya Allah, at least you gave me one sip of water. When Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he enters into the governor's house, Ibn Ziyad says, will you not do salam to me? He says, I am not going to give salam to the one who's going to kill me. So Ibn Ziyad, he stays quiet, so he knows what's going to happen. So there's a discussion backwards and forwards between Ibn Ziyad. And Ibn Ziyad, he uses such vulgar language towards Sayyidina Muslim that I cannot mention here. But suffice to say, Sayyidina Muslim, he upholds his dignity, he upholds his honor. Now one thing which is important to mention is when Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, he was going to the house of the governor, he began to cry. वो रोने लगे. तो किसी ने कहा कि you were the one who's spreading fasad and now you're crying. And Sayyidina Muslim says, I'm not crying because I'm scared of my life. Rather, if I am crying because you people promised to support Imam Hussein, and as a consequence I wrote a letter to him, and right now he is coming towards Kufa and he does not know that you have betrayed him. This is why I am crying. Eventually Ibn Ziyad, he said, O Muslim, I am going to punish you in a way that no one has been punished up until now. And he commanded Bukair to take Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil to the top of the governor's house. And then his head was struck off and his body was thrown from the governor's house. But Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, as with all martyrs, all shuhada, his blood will not have reached the ground except that Allah had shown him his place in Jannah. So this was Sayyidina Muslim ibn Aqil, the first blood which was spilt from the family of Imam Hussein in order to uphold the banner of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Such a great individual, he paid such a great sacrifice, and in all of this he showed his steadfastness and his love for the deen of Islam and for the religion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Insha'Allah ta'ala, in the coming lectures, more detail will be discussed in this regard. And again, I congratulate the Qamar team for bringing together such an important series of lectures, inshaAllah ta'ala. Moving forward, we will learn how the events transpired and how Imam Hussein eventually got to the plains of Karbala and how he paid that sacrifice which revived the religion of Islam, such that today many people may stand up in the embodiment of Yazid, with the evil of Yazid. But Imam Hussein, he has given that namuna, he has given us that example, that whenever someone stands up with the evil likes of Yazid, then somebody will stand in the manner of Imam Hussein to remove and dispel that evil, inshaAllah ta'ala. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His infinite mercy, He gives us all the ability to act upon the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ya Allah, give us the ability to act in accordance with the sacrifice of Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala. And Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, give us the ability to abstain from all type of haram. Give us the ability to act upon the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to recite the Quran, to fast in the month of Ramadan, to pay our zakat. Ya Allah, give us the ability to seek the knowledge of the religion, to act upon the knowledge of the religion. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Sattar, Ya Ghaffar, Ya Allah. Accept our du'as. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi wa nuri arshihi sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin ya rabbal alamin.